Begin self-publishing episode number 77. Choosing your next project.
Interested in self-publishing but don't know where to start? Want to get your book onto Amazon? Want to hold your paperback book in your hands? Learn how on the Begin Self-Publishing podcast with your host, Tim Lewis.
As you might have noticed from the tenor of my voice, I've been suffering from a bit of a cold at the moment. It's one of those annoying infections that's been around for almost a week. So apologies for the poor quality of my voice in this show. Now I've almost reached the end of NaNoWrimo, that is the competition for writing a novel in the month of November. I now have to face the choice of what am I going to do as my next writing project. Or, more generally, as the next thing I do in my business. To be honest, I think I've been hiding behind the fact that I've had this outstanding third novel in my Magpies and Magic series to write for a long time. It was easy to say, oh, well, I'll just write the next book in NaNoWrimo. But having that unfinished loop of a third book has made it quite hard to actually commit to other bigger projects. You know, I've dallied with all sorts of other projects over the years, including app development, thinking about creating courses and also writing non-fiction books. But I've always kind of had in the back of my mind that I would finish this fantasy series off and then consider what to do. Now, of course, I've just finished the first draft of the Magpies and Magic book. And there's all the editing and cover design and formatting and other things to do. But in terms of the fundamental creative work, that's already been done. And such is the lead time of most books and projects that I need to consider what I'm going to work on around now. So in terms of what am I going to do next, I haven't really decided yet, but there are a few criteria that I'm looking at. First thing is I don't particularly want to write another fiction series in a hurry. While I enjoy writing fiction, I'm not sure I'm good enough at it to actually sell lots of books. Also, as I tend to write shorter fiction books, it's very hard to sell them at a price level where they actually make a lot of money or they're easy to market. It's a lot easier to market a $9.99 book than it is a $2.99 book, for example. I also need to find something where I can get an audience ready for whatever book or product I produce. So this is either use an existing audience that I've built up. So, for example, people on this podcast would be good for a self-publishing product. Or one that I can find or create. So if I can find a community of people online who want to know about how to ride a unicorn, then I've got a book about riding unicorns, then that works as an audience. Because you need really an audience, first to be able to sell your books, and also to build up that critical amount of reviews and interest in your product before you can even get into a chart. I also need to do a lot more research, both in terms of Kindle keywords and categories. Actually find out if there is a market in terms of a book for whatever I'm going to write next. I've been a bit flippant in just writing what I think I want to write, which is very good from a creative point of view, but is not great from a sales point of view. I also need to give some thought as to what I actually want to be working on for the next couple of years. If I do something that is potentially profitable, but I find personally boring, then that might not be what I actually want to work on. And the last criteria is it needs to be able to generate money. I don't necessarily need a blockbuster J.K. Rowling style hit, but I need something to bring in some revenue so that I can keep everything going for a lot longer. Some of you may be wondering if I'm going to keep doing this podcast. Well, the answer is, for the moment, yes. I enjoy doing the podcast. I enjoy interviewing people on it. And I even enjoy these solo shows when my voice holds up. But it's an enormous amount of work. I'm also aware that I've also built up an audience well, there's not a huge number of you. There are a reasonable amount of you that listen every week to this show. And it may be that I create some sort of self-publishing related product, either a training course or more likely a book of some kind. There are a lot of good self-publishing courses and books out there, though. My ideal would be to write a really good marketing book for self-publishers. The only issue is because I've not been particularly great in my own success of actually marketing my own books. I do feel it would be a little bit insincere to create a book marketing course until I've actually had some success myself. We all know there are a lot of people online who do this approach of not necessarily being very good at something, but being very good at selling something that gets other people to do something. So what are my potential options? As I've mentioned a few times on here, if you listen to the back catalogue or if you've been a long-time listener, I was seriously considering creating a Udemy course for self-publishers. As with many things, Udemy changed all of their course and guideline structures, and that basically put me off creating a Udemy course. They've always had an aggressive discounting option, and now I don't think you can even have a high value course on Udemy anymore. I need to look into it though, because that may still be worth something considering. I've also seriously thought about doing a longer term, several month live training course. Well, I say live not as in you're all going to come to my house and sit and do a training course, but more an online live training course where I help people through maybe a whole month or 6-week period of time to get their books self-published. I'm not really sure when I will get the time to actually have this period. It possibly would be April or something like that. And I'm also not sure if there's that many people who'd be prepared to invest the money in it. So an online course would be less work, but it wouldn't have the interaction of a live course. In terms of books on self-publishing, I'm thinking of doing a self-publishing 2017 kind of guidebook. Obviously to release sometime in 2017. One great issue in non-fiction books is that obviously they do get out of date. But I think if you actually include the year in the title of the book, then it becomes obvious that is only considered the version for that year. I would create a 2018 book, not make it an update for the 2017 book. The 2017 book was a success. Another option I've thought about is actually combining some things that I do enjoy doing, so marketing for podcasters, for example. Because I've been a lot more successful at marketing the podcast than my books. However, again, you get a bit of the imposter syndrome. It's like, while my show downloads are above average, they're not that huge. And certainly a lot of the other self-publishing podcasts have bigger listenership. So am I entitled to write a book about marketing for podcasters? I still think so, but I'm not sure about that option. And I'm not also really sure whether there's a market for it. So again, it comes back to doing the research, which I'll need to do about that and all the other options. Another potential thing I could do is nothing to do with books, which is going back to writing apps. I am actually a former developer, and I have purchased and created in the past an Android app. It's a pretty simple and obscure Android app for creating what are called Google UTM codes. These are little links that go on the end of website addresses and allow the analytics on the other side, on the web server that's being accessed, to actually see where the link came from. The trouble was that I wrote this app and then took it to Social Media Marketing World 2015 and nobody really knew what I was talking about. I was going to port it to the Apple iPhone, but to say it's hard to release an iPhone app with the bureaucracy involved is an understatement. And I just basically let it slide. Now I could go back to that app and update it, because they're becoming a lot more fashionable now, UTM codes, as people begin to understand what they're actually used for. But the problem with writing apps is that it's a huge amount of time to get back into it. It's not necessarily like writing a book, where you can go back to it and you will be slow, but you're not going to be really slow. But writing apps is about 2 or 3 weeks of doing not an awful lot, getting your environment working. And then you have 2 or 3 weeks of a small amount of productivity. And then after that, you start getting into being able to write stuff really quickly. So all my options are a bit up in the air at the moment. But I thought I would share them with you. So, the podcast is going to carry on for a while till I run out of people to interview or something else comes up that's amazingly profitable and means I can't do the podcast anymore. There's an interview show next week, which ironically I'm actually recording the interview today. So expect another croaky Tim next week. Talk to you guys next week.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please stop by iTunes and rate and leave a review. This helps make the show more visible. For free resources, show notes, and other helpful content, join the community at beginselfpublishing.com.